How would you like a 15% discount to my daily email, the stack of stuff, the show notes, discounts to the conference, all of that? All you need to do is text the word show to 33777. You'll get the annual subscription with a 15% discount to my daily email. You'll get the stack of stuff, the links to the show notes, discounts to the conference, and so much more. All you have to do is text the word show, SHOW, to 33777. Text show to 33777.
Welcome to the Eric Erickson Show podcast, Hour 1.
Breaking news, welcome. It's Eric Erickson here out of the gate. John Thune has been named the Senate Majority Leader. He'll be the leader of the Republicans, replacing Mitch McConnell. Mitch McConnell, the longest-serving Republican leader in American history. McConnell has been leader since the early 2000s. John Thune of South Dakota will replace him. It was between him and John Cornyn in the end. Rick Scott did not have enough votes to make it to the second round of the vote. The ultimate vote wound up being 29-24. It's a closed-door vote. We don't know who voted for whom unless people were pretty vocal about it. Most of them weren't. But John Thune will be the Senate Republican leader. Breaking news happening now. He will work with Donald Trump and Mike Johnson to advance Trump's agenda. Other breaking news, Donald Trump meeting with Joe Biden right now, and early this morning voiced support for Mike Johnson to be Speaker of the House. Lots happening. Y'all, I might as well start with this. I wasn't going to, but I might as well get it out of the way so we can move on to other things. The hardest thing I've ever had to do in my life was to look my wife in the eyes and tell her she was going to die. The week of Christmas in 2006, my wife was diagnosed with a very advanced, aggressive form of cancer, and she was given 6 months to live. The doctor said there was no point in treatment. There was nothing going to save her life. I had a 1-year-old at the time, and I had to be the one to tell my wife, had to wake her up from anesthesia, sit with her in the recovery room until she was coherent, and let her know there was nothing that could be done. They had gone in to do a biopsy of her lungs. They identified the problem, and they knew that there was nothing that could be done. And the worst part about it was she was recovering from anesthesia, so it all seemed kind of like a dream, and I had to do it all over again. Once she was more sufficiently recovered, I had to yet again tell my wife that you've got a death sentence. You've got 6 months to live. Now, thankfully, it was a misdiagnosis. What a wild way to start Christmas that year. It was rough. It was rough. Thankfully, it was a misdiagnosis. And, had she not been misdiagnosed, it's just funny the way these things work. Had she not been misdiagnosed in 2006, when she was diagnosed with lung cancer in 2016, we would have never known she had lung cancer except for that misdiagnosis 10 years before. So the misdiagnosis actually wound up saving her life. But that night was rough. I don't wish that on any of you ever, to have to look your loved one in the eyes and tell them they're dying. Second hardest thing I've ever had to do in my life happened after this program yesterday. I was not expecting. None of us were expecting it. We had to put our dog down yesterday. Many of you, I know when I was in Tulsa, a lot of you were asking how Maggie's doing. Maggie got a lump on her throat a couple of weeks ago, and the doctor was a little bit fearful it could be a form of cancer, but steroids and antibiotics, the lump went away. And then the lump started coming back again once she got off the steroids, so the vet sent us to Blue Pearl, the animal vet specialists in Atlanta, and they were able to extract fluid and run a diagnosis on it. Well, in the meantime, that lump over the weekend got bigger and bigger, more rapidly, quicker and quicker and quicker, grew and grew and grew, till on Sunday, we got up at 7:15 in the morning and drove an hour and a half to the vet in Atlanta, and the thing ruptured while we were at the vet. It was just like chocolate milk was pouring out of her neck. It was gross. But they did surgery. They removed, she had an abscessed lymph node. They removed it. They cleaned everything, and she was just left with this gaping hole on the side of her neck and all bandaged up. And my wife was supposed to take her up to Atlanta this morning to get the oncology report, but they called yesterday afternoon, and it turns out she had all the cancers. She had the treatable lymphoma and she had the untreatable lymphoma. In addition to a massive infection in her body, she couldn't have chemo because they had to resolve the infection. And the doctor, and look, I know this is oncologists, human or animal, are like, you can fight. And they were like, well, we can do like a whole bunch of rounds of chemo, and you're just going to buy her like maybe a year and a half of life, and she's going to be miserable the whole time. But I'm stunned by the number of people who go through that option because it's for them and not their animal. And we were like, wait, so we're going to give our dog chemotherapy for, 8 months to a year, and at most she's going to get a year and a half of life? It just, no, that made no sense to us. So we made the decision yesterday that there was no reason to wait. Maggie was miserable. She couldn't eat. She had this wound on the side of her neck. She couldn't lift her head off the pillow. And to put her through chemo, no. So we took our dog to the vet. And that was that. And we sat in the room the whole time and watched life fade away. It was unpleasant. So thank you all. I put up a note on social media, got lots of prayers and well wishes. It was actually, it was definitely the second hardest thing after telling my wife she was going to die, to actually have to take our dog. And let's be real here, the dog was my wife's dog. Like my wife was a little concerned that my son wasn't super emotional about it. It's like, yeah, look, he loves the dog, but this is your dog. This is not his dog. You and the dog sleep in the bed together. You and the dog take naps together. You and the dog go everywhere together. This is your animal, not his animal. He's not as emotionally invested as you, and he's a boy. My daughter was more emotional. She cried. I tried very hard not to. Wanted to be the strong man of the family. It was a wreck. It was a wreck. And then to slowly see the color fade out of her tongue it was tough. We did not want to keep the ashes. We did do cremation. There's no reason to keep the ashes. I know people who do, and I just find it a little creepy. And my wife has always found it a little creepy as well. I'll keep my wife's ashes until I work up the nerve to get on a motorcycle with the lid off the urn and ride and let the wind take her. But no, not the dog's ashes. So in any event, thank you again. I have been overwhelmed with so many text messages, and I can't reply to everyone. It's emotionally grueling. I think people understand that it is just emotionally just overwhelming to do and to deal with. And I appreciate everyone and all your many condolences and kindnesses. And I'm too spent to do this. I've got to be out of town tomorrow too, which is I got to do a listener event in Las Vegas, and it's too late to cancel that. It's been on the books, and my wife was like, just go. You need a break. I haven't had a break. I've been dealing with sick family and sick dog. My wife mostly with a sick dog, and then me with my wife who's dealing with a sick dog, and the election and everything else. I'm ready for a break. I'm not going to be here on Friday, by the way. I'm decided I'm going to stay an extra little bit in Las Vegas and unwind. So in any event, let's move on to real stuff. I just might as well get that out of the way. Pete Hegseth, that's where I want to begin, really. He is an unconventional pick for Secretary of Defense. He's from Minnesota, ran for the Senate unsuccessfully, was endorsed back in the day by Bill Kristol, interestingly enough, who's now blasting the pick. It's Bill Kristol. What an odd guy. A lot of people in the media are scratching their heads over Pete Hegseth because they think, well, he's a weekend Fox and Friends guy. That's why Trump picked him. And I got to tell you, there's a level of arrogant snideness in the responses of a lot of people over Pete Hegseth. John Noonan is a defense writer. He's writing over at National Review. He's a veteran of the Air Force. Pete is an unconventional pick. He spent his last few years as one of the co-hosts on Fox and Friends. As I speak, newsrooms across the country are preparing snide commentary that will highlight his time at the network rather than his time in uniform. That is a mistake. Pete is a graduate of Princeton and Harvard and a combat veteran. Despite his Ivy League pedigree, Pete saw the 9/11 attacks and responded by volunteering for the infantry. Anyone who knows him understands the guy has a deep and abiding love for America and her military, in particular the young men and women with steel in their hands and sand under their boots who put themselves in harm's way to defend the Constitution. The Secretary of Defense role is a political appointment, and it is political in nature. To be successful is to understand politics and all the strange little levers and pulleys and gears that make Washington spin. He understands politics. At 44, he will no doubt be accused of being too young for the role. Not true. Don Rumsfeld was 43 when he was appointed as Secretary of Defense for his first stint and was quite a good Secretary of Defense. One of our most effective service secretaries in history, John Lehman Jr., was 38 when Ronald Reagan named him Secretary of the Navy. He outfoxed the Pentagon bureaucracy who opposed him and was lauded for being the architect of the 600-ship Navy we have. There's rot in the Pentagon. It is deeply entrenched. It requires an unconventional pick, youthful energy, and a keen understanding of Congress and Washington in perilous times. Yes, I completely agree, by the way. I think Pete Hegseth is an out-of-the-box pick who will be good. This is Hegseth. He has something in common with Mike Walls and Marco Rubio. Listen to this clip. He was doing a podcast interview.
China's building an army specifically dedicated to defeating the United States of America. That is their strategic outset. Take hypersonic missiles. So if our whole power projection platform is aircraft carriers and the ability to project power that way strategically around the globe, and yeah, we have a nuclear triad and all of that, but a big part of it. And if 15 hypersonic missiles can take out our 10 aircraft carriers in the first 20 minutes of a conflict, what does that look like?
Yes. That's part of the problem here. We need more nuclear attack submarines and less aircraft carriers at this point. Why? Because our nuclear submarines are so quiet. One member of the military from one of foreign power, I think it was the British or the Australians, said that it is easier to find a tremor underground on Mars, to detect a tremor underground on Mars, than it is to find an American attack submarine under the ocean. That's how quiet our submarines are. Yeah, this was a British or Australian official talking about our military, and that was their quote, that it is easier to detect a tremor underground on Mars than it is to find an American nuclear attack submarine under the ocean. Aircraft carriers are very easy to find. We need the subs. We also need a shipbuilding plan. And we need someone unconventional, and that is Pete Hegseth. There is a report from Politico that our Pentagon officials are meeting behind the scenes to try to figure out how they can stall, slow, or disrupt Donald Trump's agenda. Part of the problem here is our bureaucracy believes the politicians work for them instead of the other way around. Our bureaucrats believe they know best, and the people of the United States just voted that they know best, and they will be heard. Having Pete Hegseth in as Secretary of Defense is deeply disruptive. It is a deeply unconventional pick. I assure you, China never saw it coming. And guess who Pete Hegseth realizes our big enemy is? China. So does Marco Rubio. So does Mike Walsh, the new incoming national security advisor. So does Elise Stefanik, the incoming UN ambassador. They all recognize that our threats are with China. We still have outstanding threats with Russia. He's an unconventional pick. He's a good pick. Stop listening to the left-wing bubble that says, oh, my gosh, he's just a Fox News pretty face. That's why he was picked. No. He cares deeply, passionately about the military. He served after 9/11. He's been involved in a lot of military nonprofits. He knows this world. It's a good pick. Hello, welcome back. It is Eric Erickson here across the nation. The phone number is 877-973-7425. Should you wish to be on the program, I would be happy to have you. Can I y'all, it's just the way my head works. They're discouraging me from saying this, but I just got to say it. I'm in all of the misery of yesterday. I had to restrain myself from laughing a little bit. The doctor came in to put our dog down, shaves her back paw, and rubs it with alcohol before putting the needle in. And all I could think was, she's not going to get an infection. I'm telling you, no need for the alcohol. I mean, and I realized it was the doctor being respectful to our dog, but also I was like, it's not going to matter. Oh, it was sad. And then my wife was like, do we keep her blankets? Do we not keep her blankets? It's like, no, don't keep her blankets. And we got rid of the blankets. Then my wife dug the blankets out of the trash and washed them, and she wants to keep them. And I suspect we're going to be like discovering soon that we're getting a new dog. So I am deeply allergic to dogs. That was the other thing about yesterday going to the vet's office is my allergies just overwhelmed. So we had Maggie, who's a golden doodle, because I'm not allergic to them. And so in addition to like being upset already and being sad that our dog, my throat's closing up, not because I'm about to cry, but because I'm in a veterinary clinic filled with other dogs that I'm allergic to. What a mess. All right. Let's move on. The Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, looks set to retake his position. John Thune is going to be the Republican leader of the United States Senate. The implications of all of those, and I need to bring you back up to speed on what reconciliation means, because it in and of itself is going to be a very big deal moving forward. And there is one person in Washington, D.C., who has been thinking about reconciliation more than any other person. And I want to tell you who that person is. If you read my morning email, you already know. But first, I got to tell you about my bank, Old Glory Bank. I love them. Let me tell you about it from a business perspective, though. The number of businesses I've sent to Old Glory Bank, and they love them because they were a little skeptical not having a local branch manager where they are, because Old Glory Bank is headquartered out of Oklahoma, and they're mostly online. But the businesses now, I mentioned one yesterday, and another buddy of mine reached out and said, it's not just him, happened to me too. Old Glory Bank was so hands-on, they needed a loan. They moved their accounts to Old Glory Bank. Then they decided to get a loan. They were super hands-on, sent somebody to them to review the books, look at the business, get to know the business, get to know the management team. And it made it much easier for them to get help. And that person is going to be there for a while. If you've got a business and you're looking for a bank, oldglorybank.com. You can fill the form out online, Social Security number or EIN. I've got a personal savings and checking account with them. They do loans, mortgages, CDs, everything you need. Oldglorybank.com, oldglorybank.com. Member FDIC, equal housing lender, terms and conditions apply. Greetings, welcome. It's Eric Erickson here across the United States. The phone number, if you would like to be on the program, 877-973-7425. As always, if you text Eric, E-R-I-C-K, to 33777, you can get the live stream, the show notes, and so much more. I want to take this phone call from Pamela. Welcome to the show, Pamela. How are you?
Hi, good afternoon, Eric. Wanted to ask a couple of questions. Trump may be putting, just a quick comment, he may be appointing Alina Habib, I think is how you pronounce her last name, his former attorney, who lost the case against Letitia James for him, that civil case in Manhattan. But did you realize she got paid $8 million from Trump's war chest?
Oh, yeah, she made a lot of money.
That's ridiculous. She didn't even win the case, but she's just another pretty face that he wants to put in. Now, as well, I heard you speaking yesterday that Kristi Noem, whom he elected, and you were hoping he might change his mind, which I agree with you. She's just another pretty face as well. And you as well said she, had some issues over really not carrying her governorship well.
Right.
Although she'll be working as Homeland Security with several other, apparently, men. She'll be over that, I would guess. Those men they'll work in tandem together, I assume, because I read online there were several other people she'll be working with. I don't know that she will oversee them, I guess, as head of Homeland Security. But I guess the next question would be, if the Senate, she has to be confirmed by the Senate. Since it's a Republican Senate, does it automatically have to confirm her?
So, no, they don't have to confirm her, Pamela. And she and if Tulsi Gabbard is nominated for Director of National Intelligence, the two of them may actually have problems with Republican senators. Now, the default for Democrats and Republicans alike is give the president the cabinet he wants. And if you will recall, even in the first term, there were Democrats who voted for Donald Trump as cabinet picks. But although the Republican majority, of course, they had enough, they didn't have to worry about it until he had some replacements after the Democrats were in charge. But the general rule is that, you give the president his cabinet picks. Nome may have trouble because the Department of Homeland Security is a very weird amalgamation of departments put together after 9/11. And it's a very unwieldy group of agencies together. Now, the interesting thing about it is that you got Republicans behind the scenes advising Donald Trump that she's going to be in over her head. And we'll see if she's able to make it to the confirmation. When Tulsi Gabbard is a name being floated for Director of National Intelligence, I can tell you some of the Republican senators I've talked to, they're going to have a 53-seat majority. She may not get 50 votes. You'll have to have 50 votes for confirmation plus one from J.D. Vance, and she may not get 50 votes, is what I'm being told, if she's the nominee for Director of National Intelligence. There are Republicans in the Senate who have very strong objections to Tulsi Gabbard for some of her foreign policy views on Russia and things like that. It's going to be a wild ride. Now, what I do know is out of the gate, Mike Johnson has the votes to be Speaker of the House again. If you read my morning piece, this is why it matters. Let me explain to you reconciliation. Republicans in Washington or whoever controls Congress can do something once a year, maybe twice a year under a precedent set by Chuck Schumer in certain conditions, but definitely once a year can do something called reconciliation. Back in the day, there was a man from West Virginia in the Senate. His name was Robert Byrd. Everything in West Virginia is named after him. He had been a leader of the KKK, became a Democratic member of the Senate, served for a very long time, and the Democrats loved their Klansman, Bob Byrd. Bob Byrd was a deficit hawk. He loved to spend money, loved to throw money around, but he was concerned about the national debt, and he was concerned that members of Congress could filibuster in the Senate issues about national debt and spending. The result was that Bob Byrd authored a rule into the United States Senate that 2/3 of the Senate agreed to, that once a year, after the House and Senate have agreed on a budget, the Senate can pass a measure called reconciliation that reconciles all federal spending to the parameters of the agreed upon budget. If there's no agreed upon budget, it's the last budget agreed on. And in this case, the last budget agreed on goes back to the Obama era. There was never a budget passed when Trump or Biden were president. They just kept working off the old budget from when Obama was president. So you can change and tweak spending. And the rule is, so long as it doesn't increase the national debt, but actually has a meaningful impact on reducing the deficit, you can get it passed without a filibuster. It's just a majority vote. So the national debt is how much money the government owes collectively over time, and the deficit is that year's spending. The expenditures increased over income. That difference is the deficit. So if you're spending $300 trillion, you're spending $3 trillion. Your income is only $2 trillion. Your deficit is $1 trillion. 3 minus 2. Expenditures minus income equals whatever's left over. That negative there, that is your deficit for the year, and then that goes into the national debt. So Bob Byrd's rule is if you reduce the deficit, you can once a year pass a reconciliation package to reconcile all federal spending. Now, one of the caveats is that you're not allowed to add new policies. This tripped up the Democrats this past year. Remember, the Democrats wanted to bail out student loans and give amnesty to illegal immigrants in reconciliation, and also make abortion the law of the land. And the Democrats, or the parliamentarian in the Senate, said that would be new policy. You can't do it. And that's not under the reconciliation rule. The parliamentarian's decision is binding. The Senate cannot overrule the Senate can overrule the parliamentarian on anything the parliamentarian in the Senate decides, except reconciliation. If the parliamentarian rules what they want to do is new policy, they can't do it. That's what made everyone in the Senate be willing to do this Byrd rule back in the day, was the agreement that there would be no change in public policy. You could change the spending allocations. So, for example, how did the Democrats get the Green New Deal passed? Well, they argued to the parliamentarian, we're already subsidizing green energy programs. So this isn't new, it's just an expansion. And the parliamentarian went along with that. Based on that precedent now, the Republicans can say we've already block granted money to the states for education. We're just expanding it, and cut the Department of Education. All of this goes back to the Speaker of the House. In June of 2024, Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, convened a series of meetings with members of the Senate to discuss plans for the 2025 reconciliation package. And you know the response from the Senate Republicans? They laughed him out of the building. The Senate Republicans thought it was laughable to even consider reconciliation because they didn't know if they were going to have a majority of the House, let alone the Senate. Mike Johnson said he was convinced they were going to have the House, the Senate, and the White House, and they needed to start planning reconciliation. And the Senate didn't do it. But you know who did? Mike Johnson. Mike Johnson continued having the meetings, continued making them come to the meetings, used his clout as Speaker of the House to force the Senate Republicans to start coming up with a framework for reconciliation. He used his clout as Speaker of the House to force House Republicans to come up with a plan for reconciliation. So Mike Johnson, since June, has been plotting how to implement Donald Trump's agenda through reconciliation, and he's the guy with the plan. He's the guy with the book. John Thune, the new Senate Republican leader, was one of the Republicans in the Senate who allegedly questioned why they were even having the conversations at the time. But Thune, you should know, had the backing of some of the prominent conservatives in the in the Republican conference. Here's what I'm told. Most of the Republican members of the Senate did not want Rick Scott because they blamed Rick Scott for the Senate in 2022. They said Rick Scott would not stand up to Donald Trump and allowed Donald Trump to pick candidates without himself intervening to dissuade Donald Trump from people like Dr. Oz and Herschel Walker and even Kerry Lake. And because of that, the Senate Republicans should have been able to pick up the Senate, but because of bad candidates, they lost it, and they blame Rick Scott for not intervening. They also really hated the all of the online right, we're going to get into this in a little while, rallying for Rick Scott because they viewed it as a paid operation, paid operatives on social media trying to rally the right in a herd to Rick Scott. You had people like Dana Lash, a radio show host, friend of mine, who was vehement that Rick Scott's bad on guns, bad on the Second Amendment. You can't have Rick Scott. I know and like Rick Scott. I'd be perfectly fine with him, but I knew going into this that me being vocal for Rick Scott was going to hurt him more than help him. And sure enough, some of the Senate Republicans in the end said also this grassroots agitation for Rick Scott is what finally said enough is enough. that he didn't stand up in 22 to Trump and then had the Trump horde of online right fans going for him. That was enough. So it came down to Cornyn and Thune. Conservatives in the Senate prefer John Thune to John Cornyn for this reason. I prefer John Thune to John Cornyn for this reason. I know a lot of people who have worked for John Cornyn. A lot of people who do not like John Cornyn, who worked for John Cornyn, and their reason is because they say John Cornyn in public was very, very helpful to conservatives and in private would sabotage the efforts. That's not me. I don't know John Cornyn. I don't know John Thune. I know and like Rick Scott. I think Rick Scott would have been great. Rick Scott never in private was unwilling to fight for conservatives. But his Senate Republican friends were the ones who felt like he betrayed them in 22, and they nursed a grudge against him. But John Cornyn, I know too many conservatives said that in public he was willing to do all the right things, and in private sabotage conservatives. And John Thune, for all of his faults, never actively tried to sabotage conservatives in private. And so a number of the Republican senators went with Thune. I'm told Ted Cruz is one of the ones who went with John Thune over John Cornyn, who is his colleague from Texas, if that tells you something. The big guy, though, that we needed to have his back is Mike Johnson. Donald Trump this morning had a meeting with the House Republicans and told them to stand with Mike Johnson, that he wanted Mike Johnson to be Speaker. He privately apparently told Marjorie Taylor Greene to lay off Mike Johnson and not try to undermine him. Here's the other big thing of why we want Mike Johnson is because the House convenes on January 3rd for the first time. January 6th, they'll make Kamala Harris certify the election results. There's not enough time to have a fight over the Speaker of the House, given what's happening. You could have the fight over Kevin McCarthy in 2022 because there was no certification of a presidential ballot. There is now. Time's of the essence. So stick with Mike Johnson. And it looks like they're going to, thankfully, because, Johnson as well, he's the very first social and fiscal conservative to be Speaker of the House. That matters, too. Don't underestimate that fact. Mike Johnson is the very first Speaker of the House to philosophically and institutionally be firmly socially conservative, firmly pro-life, and a firm fiscal conservative. We've never had that before. So good for Mike Johnson. Now, let me tell you about Hillsdale College, because Hillsdale College would love to have a relationship with you. If you go to ericforhillsdale.com, E-R-I-C-K, ericforhillsdale.com, you can sign up with Hillsdale College. You can start getting imprimis for free. You can learn about common sense ways the country was founded from Dr. Larry Arnn and his lecture series on the Constitution that you can get for free. You get their podcast network for free, and you can support Hillsdale College's institutional mission to advance education without indoctrination and instill a love of America. It's not indoctrination to instill a love of America. It's just the facts. We're such a great country, and you got all these projects out there like the 1619 Project trying to poison the well for America. Hillsdale College is trying to tell the truth about America and why we're such a great country. ericforhillsdale.com. Get imprimis. It's show prep for your mind. I've been getting it for free since I was in law school. ericforhillsdale.com, E-R-I-C-K, ericforhillsdale.com. Sign up with Hillsdale College today. Build your relationship with them. Get imprimis for free, the podcast for free, the lecture series on the Constitution and citizenship from Victor Davis Hanson for free, and get their pocket Constitution for free. ericforhillsdale.com. Hello there. Welcome. It is Eric Erickson here across the United States of America, and boy, am I glad to have you. When we come back at the top of the hour, my buddy Jim actually just texted me, and he says, at what point will we conservatives stop listening to and getting our dander up over what the mainstream media says? We all know they're bought and paid for by the Democrats, as well as much of the polling. I'm no prophet nor the son of one, but I've been saying for months that the election shouldn't be close, and it wasn't. But every news program, including Fox, too close to call, within the margin of error. Daddy's coming home. I just texted you back, said the top of the hour. I really want you to be here at the top of the hour because I got to make some very specific points that otherwise aren't going to get said. First, this hour of the program brought to you by First Liberty Building a Loan. Wherever you are in the United States of America, First Liberty Building a Loan can help your business grow. If you're buying a building, you're building a building, you're growing, let First Liberty help your business grow. Reach out to him, firstlibertyga.com. I got to play you this small clip from Harry Inton on CNN.
Exactly right. I mean, Donald Trump, you can remember back in 2017, the liberal cities were the resistance, the core of the resistance. What happened in 2024? You think of a major city in the United States, Donald Trump put up the best Republican performance for a Republican nominee for president in at least 20 years, if not the entire 21st century. We're talking about Chicago, Los Angeles, New York City, San Francisco. Across the map, Donald Trump put up historically strong numbers for Republican candidate, for president, in places that, truthfully, if you had asked me 8 years ago, I would have never thought possible.
Exactly. And, why did he do it? He didn't do it because of rich white people. He did it because of working class, white, black, and Hispanic people. I'm sorry, but I can't bring myself to say brown-skinned people. We have black and white in this country. Now they want to capitalize black and they want to capitalize white when they refer to culture. I don't do that. And then they want to refer to Hispanic people as brown-skinned people. But you're not allowed to refer to American Indians as red-skinned people. God forbid you do that. But we can call brown-skinned people. The whole thing is perverse. The identity politics of the left is perverse. By the way, interestingly enough, do you know what non-white demographic, actually what racial ethnic demographic voted for Donald Trump in the biggest numbers? I had no idea. It's in the exit polling. What demographic of people overwhelmingly voted for? Over 85% of a single demographic voted for Donald Trump. Any idea? It wasn't white people, wasn't black people, wasn't Asian people, wasn't Hispanic people. It was American Indians. American Indians. And by the way, did you know that American Indians prefer the term American Indian to Native American? Turns out they do. And American Indians overwhelmingly voted for Donald Trump. Now, you may ask how, but I would never make a joke like that. American Indians, though, they love them some Donald Trump. Now can we pass the law to repeal reservation status for Oklahoma, please? Half that state is also a reservation. It has screwed up legislating and taxation in Oklahoma. It's time to get rid of half of Oklahoma being an Indian reservation because none of them actually live on a reservation. They live in Tulsa and the like. It's time to fix that issue. Apparently, American Indians also support doing that. When we come back, though, the myopia of the media, I need you to listen to this.